a warm welcome. You're watching Times Now and I'm Meghna Deka. Our focus continues to be Prime Minister's visit to America, which clearly has left Pakistan completely rattled. In fact, yesterday in his UNGA address, the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan stooped to the level of calling out India with falsehoods and to try and malign the image of India at the global forum. However, there were no takers for Pakistan's web of lies. In fact, India has very vehemently and categorically called up Pakistan, saying in the garb of being a firefighter, Pakistan is actually the arsonist instead. Listen into the strong rebuttal which is coming in from India at the UNSC after a rattled Pakistan spins a web of lies.
Mr. President, we exercise our right of reply to one more attempt by the leader of Pakistan to tarnish the image of this august forum by bringing in matters internal to my country and going so far as to spew falsehoods on the world stage. While such statements deserve our collective contempt and sympathy for the mindset of the person who utters falsehood repeatedly, I am taking the floor to set the record straight. Regrettably, this is not the first time the leader of Pakistan has misused platforms provided by the UN to propagate false and malicious propaganda against my country, and seeking in vain to divert the world's attention from the sad state of his country, where terrorists enjoy free pass while the lives of ordinary people, especially those belonging to the minority communities, are turned upside down. Mr. President, member states are aware that Pakistan has an established history and policy of harboring, aiding, and actively supporting terrorists. This is a country which has been globally recognized as one openly supporting, training, financing, and arming terrorists as a matter of state policy. It holds the ignoble record of hosting the largest number of terrorists proscribed by the UN Security Council. Mr. President, we marked the solemn occasion of the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks just a few days back. The world has not forgotten that the mastermind behind that dastardly event, Osama bin Laden, got shelter in Pakistan. Pakistan leadership continues to glorify him as a martyr. Regrettably, even today, we heard the leader of Pakistan trying to justify acts of terror. Such defense of terrorism is unacceptable in the modern world. We keep hearing that Pakistan is a victim of terrorism. This is the country which is an arsonist disguising itself as a firefighter. Pakistan nurtures terrorists in their backyard in the hope that they will only harm their neighbors. Our region, in fact, the entire world, has suffered because of their policies. On the other hand, they are trying to cover up sectarian violence in their country as acts of terror. Mr. President, this is also the country that still holds the despicable record in our region of having executed a religious and cultural genocide against the people of what is now Bangladesh. As we mark the 50th anniversary this year of that horrid event in history, there is not even an acknowledgement, much less accountability. Today, the minorities of Pakistan, the Sikhs, the Hindus, the Christians, live in constant fear and state-sponsored suppression of their rights. This is a regime where anti-Semitism is normalized by its leadership and even justified. Dissenting voices are muzzled daily, and enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings are well documented. Mr. President, unlike Pakistan, India is a pluralistic democracy with a substantial population of minorities who have gone on to hold highest offices in the country, including as President, Prime Minister, Chief Justices, and Chiefs of Army Staff. India is also a country with a free media and an independent judiciary, that keeps a watch and protects our constitution. Pluralism is a concept which is very difficult to understand for Pakistan, which constitutionally prohibits its minorities from aspiring for high offices of the state. The least they could do is introspect before exposing themselves to ridicule on the world stage. Finally, Mr. President, let me reiterate here that the entire Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh were, are, and will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. This includes the areas that are under the illegal occupation of Pakistan. We call upon Pakistan to immediately vacate all areas under its illegal occupation. Mr. President, allow me to be categorical about India's position. We desire normal relations with all our neighbors, including Pakistan. However, it is for Pakistan to work sincerely towards creating a conducive atmosphere, including by taking credible, verifiable, and irreversible actions to not allow any territory under its control to be used for cross-border terrorism against India in any manner.
Well, let me go across to our consulting editor, Srinjoy Chaudhari, who's joining us. Also here on the show, Indrani Bagchi, diplomatic editor of Times of India. Also, Ambassador Ashok Sajan is there with us, a former diplomat. Dr. Rajiv Nayan, a senior research associate at the IDSA, is here as well. Srinjoy, if I can come to you first. This is not the first time that Pakistan's raked up Kashmir. Pakistan's raked up and tried to spin a web of lies and try and malign India. But do you think it's once again at that, spectacularly backfired at the UN and more so to come later on in the day?
Well, the most important thing is that Imran Khan has been saying this again and again for years and years. And no one, and he says this the same thing year after year. No one wants to, everyone knows what he's saying, and everyone knows that this is coming, and no one really cares. That's really the bottom line. The only people who may be interested in what Imran Khan has to say are the few army officers who have written the speech for him. That's really the point. The important thing is, as far as the international community is concerned, everyone knows what the situation in Pakistan is. Even as the Indian diplomat said, the people in Balochistan are not interested in what Imran Khan has to say. They just want independence. The people in Sindh, more or less the same. The people in the Northwest Frontier Province, what was called Northwest Frontier Province, about the same. So who really cares about what Imran Khan says at the end of the day? Because the international community actually has a very good idea of where Pakistan is and what happens in Pakistan. So regardless of what Imran Khan says and does not say, it makes no difference.
But
they
also
know
part of the problem, isn't it? Indrani Bagchi, if I can come to you, earlier President Trump had come out in 2020, and even in earlier statements, he had named and shamed Pakistan. But in this Biden administration, in the joint statement which was put out, even though United States is no stranger to the way Pakistan is funding, aiding, abetting, and harboring terror in their own soil, this US-India statement does not directly name Pakistan. Do you think it's just a step back, or it's just a diplomatic wording by this administration?
It's neither. And in fact, we should have been upset if we had named Pakistan in a US-India joint statement, because that would have implied that Pakistan holds such an important position or such a veto in a bilateral relationship of India and the US that we would have to name them in our joint statement. And I don't think we have ever named Pakistan in our joint statement, except to refer to them as havens or sanctuaries of terror. But honestly, it would have been outrageous if they had been named in our joint statement.
So that's very interesting. So Ambassador Sajan, do you think that the Modi-Biden meeting was everything that we had expected? Because even though many are talking about naming and shaming, whether that has happened in the past or not, but also the fact that US hasn't really charted a roadmap in which way is it going to isolate the terror patrons, either diplomatically, financially, or even militarily.
Well, in my view, the Modi-Biden meeting was a notch higher than what people would have expected. First, in terms of the warmth of the reception, in terms of the warmth of the meeting, the conversations, the very easy, friendly camaraderie that took place between the two of them. So I think that really set the stage that there is a big comfort level as far as the two leaders are concerned. You would know that there have been questions raised about this, about the relationship after what has, Prime Minister Modi's relation with President Trump was, reported to be. But I have always maintained that it was the Prime Minister of India who was connecting with the President of the United States, the most powerful country. So there was nothing unusual in that. So I think it is something more in terms of your comment on terror, dealing with terror. I think at the moment, as far as the United States is concerned, it still is, somewhat looking at the fact that it has to evacuate some of its people from Afghanistan, and it knows that as far as Pakistan is concerned, it is, it has a control over the Taliban and over the powers that be in Afghanistan. So maybe, whether it is here in terms of specifics about Pakistan or Blinken's statement after his meeting with Shah Mahmood Qureshi, I think they have been a little on the low profile. But I think Kamala Harris was very, very clear when she met Prime Minister Modi that this is the terror, support to terror by Pakistan is a big problem and we need to deal with it. And she called out Pakistan for that. I think the American pressure on Pakistan as far as terrorism is concerned will definitely be much greater than what it has been in the past, because I think the utility and the dependence of the United States on Pakistan for seeking access to Afghanistan would have reduced considerably because its forces have come out from there. And we'll have to sort of, continue to work with the United States to ensure that terror, radicalization, etc., we are on the same page, and both on the bilateral as well as on the multilateral forums.
So I agree with you that Pakistan, due to perhaps its strategic importance as well, and also the role that it continues to play in Afghanistan, is perhaps one of the steps that people are going to think about, that the nations are going to be pondering over before they take any concrete action against him. However, Dr. Rajiv, Nayan, do you think, and rather what do you make of the fact that Kamala Harris, and this is something that Ambassador had also spoken about, Kamala Harris, in the one tweet that she had put out after she had met Prime Minister Modi, she decided to talk about strengthening democracies rather than naming Pakistan or any other terror organization or group. What do you make of it?
It's a very good point. Yes, now we are caught in a very complex situation. So our response has to be very complex. In a one-to-one meeting, Kamala Harris perhaps talked about countering terror, but she did not make any public statement.
Absolutely.
And this is a new situation. It doesn't mean that United States has started promoting terrorism, but it has gone down in its priority list. That we'll have to accept. The way it withdrew from Afghanistan, despite knowing the fact that it will become an epicenter of terror, but it just went ahead with its withdrawal program. So this is the situation we have to admit. But one good thing about it is that at least, I think my voice is echoing or something is going wrong with it. Is it okay?
We can hear you clearly.
Okay, fine. So one very good thing which I see that silver lining in the dark cloud is that international liberal, I am emphasizing the word liberal, international liberal public opinion has started sympathizing with India's position. It has started sympathizing that there is something very wrong with American state, and it is not in fact, in consonance or trying to understand the ground reality. So this civil society, which has always been against us, is at least sympathetic to our position that we are a victim of terror, and tomorrow it may become very acute. You know, last time, 1996, when the United States established, or it was silent, when Mujahideens were made or converted into the Talibani force.
Right.
And first it was indifferent. But later when it started biting it, later on when it started hurting it, then it realized there is something called a problem of international terrorism, something called the problem of Islamic terrorism, jihadi terrorism. Then it started acting.
Right.
And it started acting very late. So it may start acting late, but we have to galvanize, we have to mobilize public opinion. And in that light, I see this statement made by young Diplomat, a secretary. It has created an impact. The lady talking about Pakistan, what we have to highlight. Pakistan is the biggest terror state.
It has been highlighted, and India's talked about it at several forums. However, we'll have to now wait and see to what extent the rest of the nations are ready to back India. They may sympathize with India in the position we find ourselves now, faced with imminent terror threats after the Taliban takeover and the terror spillover. However, what are the concrete steps that they are willing to take? We'll have to wait and watch that for that. For the timing, however, we are slipping into a short break. We'll continue on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Times Now. Our focus continues to be Prime Minister Modi's visit to America, and we have been discussing what it really means for Pakistan, the way that it has been warned, and so has China. But then to return to the point of to what extent is US ready to be India's all-weather ally vis-a-vis Pakistan? Remember, in 2020, Trump and Modi had given out a joint statement where they say Pakistan must ensure its soil isn't used for terror attacks and expeditiously bring to justice the perpetrators of attack, and Pakistan must punish the 26/11 Mumbai Pathankot plotters. Now you have a new dispensation which is in place. So Indrani, Bagchi, if I can come to you, to what extent do you think individual ideological leanings of the leaders are going to matter when it comes to state policy and the kind of relationship that India and United States have enjoyed so far, the way that they have been building? To what extent will the individuals really matter when it comes to state policy vis-a-vis Pakistan?
So individuals at the highest level of public office,
yes, of course,
always matters. Always matters, and the US right now finds itself in a strange position where they again are might be tilting towards Pakistan to help them manage the Taliban in Afghanistan. That is possible, and that may affect their approach. Like in previous years, when during the last 10-20 years, the US failed to call out Pakistan in different ways because they needed Pakistan for logistic support. So they actually overlooked Pakistan for the Taliban who are in Pakistan. Today, does the US need Pakistan as much as it did earlier? My personal view is they don't. But I think there will be a period when they will at least attempt to get the Pakistanis to weigh in on their behalf with the Taliban. And for that, they might want to give them that space. My personal belief is that is not going to work because it hasn't worked earlier. It's unlikely to work today. However, I would also like to say that the US actually needs Pakistan much less. Because having taken themselves out of Afghanistan, they might want a Pakistan buy-in for a little while. But honestly, they have no men there anymore. They are not. They have no men. They have no treasure. Nothing. They have nothing there. And Pakistan, even the most friendly US administration is not going to believe that the Pakistanis are going to help with the Taliban or help in countering terror coming out of Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
Nobody believes that. So I don't think Pakistan can.
With lesser at stake now, we'll have to wait and see. However, if this is going to translate in anything more concrete coming in from the US against Pakistan, perhaps diplomatically, perhaps even financially at the FATF, we'll have to wait and watch for that. We are running out of time, however. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show. Indrani, Bagchi, Ambassador Sajan, as always, pleasure to have you on the show, as well as Dr. Nayan. With that, a short break, don't go anywhere.